What's going on, everybody? Pablo Ortega here, back for another Lightroom live edit. I am a local Sarasota photographer. I am focusing on real estate and architecture nowadays, but I am proficient at a lot of other things, mainly portraits, branding, stuff for social media, stuff for brands and personal accounts. And yeah, I would just want to share a little bit of how I edit, my workflow, how I get certain looks. Today we are going to be looking at this shoot that I just recently had with my beautiful girlfriend. She's a yoga instructor and she's constantly pumping out amazing content, and I do help her out with a lot of her images. Here's a before and after of what we're going to be working on today. As you can see, it started out very dark. I wanted to keep it very moody. I shot this particularly in a lower or a higher shutter speed, just so I can catch your motion, but also to give that mood that I was looking for in the final image. I will show you every setting of how I achieved that look, and at the end, if you guys want the presets of it, I can download it. I'll probably go into how to create a preset real quick while I'm finishing it. So yeah, I am actually going to start this, because if I don't, I'll go an hour like I did last time. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started on the editing. Okay, so here we are. This is what the final image is going to look like. I'm already at 13 seconds, so I'm going to go kind of quick on these. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. I'm trying to look at that as well. If I don't get to you, I definitely will after the actual edit. So let's get going. This is the original. This is a good, okay, sorry. This is shot in my backyard. Again, it was about 8 o'clock, so the sun was already coming down over on this side. We had a nice look on her face. Really wanted to show the tone of the body. We're trying to sell a service here, which is yoga. So our product has to look good, our results have to look good, and adding that extra shadow and that extra mood actually gives a little texture to the body tone, which is super important in something like this. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I am going to start off keeping my white balance where it's at. I'm not going to mess with that right now. I'm going to go right down to exposure. I want it about right about there, doing plus 95. This is keeping the shadows dark like I want them, but really giving an accent light to her features. I want to see her face. I want to see the piece in her face. Again, I want to see all the tone in the body. So this is about as bright as I'm going to keep this. I rarely touch contrast. I'm going to leave contrast alone here. My highlights are good, but because I am trying to bring her out, I'm going to go ahead and slide this up a little bit. Not much, just enough to give it a little extra light. Not like where it's at right there, plus 19. Yeah, that's perfect. Her shadows, I'm actually going to take down a smidge, just a little bit here, not much, because they're already contrasted very well. I'm really happy with the way this came out of camera, which is making my job here so much easier. My whites I'm going to put up a little bit. I'll bring up to 10. That looks good. I got nice black. It's not, it's clipping, and it's clipping a little bit in her hair. And typically I don't like this. On the blacks it's a little easier to deal with than clipping on your whites, especially when you're trying to be moody. You want a lot of blacks to come out, your shadows to be brighter than your blacks, to give it that fade and that nice contrast. So I'm actually going to keep that right where it's at, maybe move it up just a little bit so the clipping on her hair isn't as strong. That looks good. I'm fine with that. All this can be black. All this can be black. If anything, it gives it sort of a natural vignette, which I'm digging. I like it. On portraits, I like to go down on my texture. I'm going to go down to 22 on this one. Yeah, that's perfect. Now what the texture is doing is what I would typically do in Photoshop with a brush. I would go through and kind of smoothen out the face, but since they brought this texture slider, life has been much easier because I bring it down a bit and boom, We got a smooth face there. That's perfect, I like that, and it doesn't mess up too much with our clarity or our details, so I'm happy where that is. I'm going to leave our clarity where it's at. I'm going to leave our dehaze where it's at. I'm going to leave saturation where it's at because I do kind of like where the color balance is at right now, but I am going to bring the vibrance up to kind of bring out the stronger colors of this image. I'm going to go up to 11. That's good. I like where that's at. Let's move down to our tone curve. Typically I do an S curve. It's very standard. If you're not familiar with an S curve, it kind of just looks like this. Obviously this is a little too powerful. It's not at all what we are going for. As you can tell here, it's a little lighter, it's a little brighter, a little happier. So I'm going to tone this down a little bit. I don't need to be that high here, and I definitely don't need this much in my highlights. So I'm going to come down. As you can see, it starts to get really radioactive. The colors get very weird there. So let's go down to, man, I'm not even going to punch that up, I don't think. I'm just going to leave it right there. Excellent, perfect. All right, I'm happy where that's at. We're going to go ahead and move on to our Hsls and our colors because I am going to manipulate this quite a bit. Part of this photo shoot was focusing on what is called the sacral chakra, which is one of the things that Lisa, my girlfriend, is trying to teach in her classes right now. It's one of the 7 chakras, and the sacral chakra is based upon the color orange. I don't know too much of the details about the sacral chakra part, but I do know how to color correct and make things look a certain color. And right now we're going for something kind of orange because it matches the whole sacral chakra energy. And yeah, and I don't know too much about yoga in that sense, so I did know that we wanted to make it a little yellow. So a lot of our colors are actually going to be focusing on turning this more of a warm tone, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. I'm kind of cheating over here because I do have these settings already, and I want to make sure I give them this exact look that we were working with before. So I'm going to be looking over at my other screen over here to make sure I dial these in correctly. Looks like I brought down quite a bit of the colors. Starting with the orange, I went down to 10 on the orange, 12 for yellow. Green, I brought down to our yellow. And what this is doing is it's taking all of our colors, for example the yellows, taking the green tints out of it and adding, our green color is going to be taking the green tint out of it and adding a yellow tint to all of our greens. Same here with the yellow, it's taking out our green and moving it towards more orange tints. And with our orange, I'm going from orange and changing it a little bit more red, just to create a much warmer image here. In saturation, I'm actually going to go ahead and start taking the blues down. Aqua and blue are going to go all the way down because I don't need those in this image. I don't want them to show up. Also, the green is very powerful here, which again, we're going for more of an orange look. So I took this down quite a bit. I'm actually at -49 on this one, so I'm going to do that. The yellows I took down to -20. Yellows are very powerful here, which isn't a bad thing. But for the look that I'm going for, I want to focus more on our oranges and our reds. So I'm going to keep those all the way up. Looks like the magenta I took down a little bit. Now the reason I'm doing that is because her hair is purple. And although I love the purple hair, I do want to tone it down a little bit because we are focusing more on our oranges. As you can see, there's quite a theme here. I'm just trying to stick to creating a whole image around the color orange instead of keeping all the active colors, because here we have blues, we have greens, and I take those down so we can focus more on our warmer tones. Looks like under our luminance, I went up on our greens a little bit to kind of accent the matte and the plants a little bit. The luminance, if you're not familiar with it, just brightens up that certain color. So if I go down, you can see our greens go darker. If I go up, our greens get brighter. I'm going to stay at 34 on this one. And I'm also brightening up our orange a little bit because it's important. it's the most important color of these images. So I'm going to go up to +6 here. It's not much of a difference, but if I come up here, I'm going to go ahead and shut this off so you can see the difference it makes. Very subtle, but again, makes it look more orange. Took out a lot of our greens, a lot of our yellows, and it's giving me the look that I'm going for. So we're good on our colors. We're going to go ahead and move on to our split toning. I do believe I did a little bit of that. I went to my hue. Let's start with our highlights. And I know I wanted something orange. I actually started at 42 with a saturation level of 7 on this. What this is doing is adding oranges to all of our highlighted areas. So everywhere you see bright image data, they are going to be pumped up with orange. It's like injecting these colors with an orange tone. And that's just in the highlights. So again, I'll go back down to 7 where I want it. And we're going to do an opposing color from the color wheel, which in this case, we're going to go with a turquoise. And it's very standard for people to use the orange turquoise. I don't use it that often, but it just made sense with these sets of images. As you can see, what I'm doing here is adding blue to all the shadows, which counteracts the oranges. So if I go all the way up, you'll see our shadows are blown out with blue. I'm going to move this back down to 2 because I want the blue to be very, very subtle because again, we're sticking to our oranges and that's what we're focusing on. Looks like I'm at 10 minutes and 23 seconds, so I'm going to kind of hurry up. My details are very standard. I'm going to go to actually 65. I think originally I had 70 something, but it doesn't need to be that high. My amount is going to be at 65. My detail is going to be at 30, and that's what I do for my sharpening. I don't have any noise here, so I'm not going to add any of that. On every one of my images, I do add lens correction, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the chromatic aberration, just something I like to click just in case. I don't think there's any in this image, but I did it anyways. Enable profile corrections because I was using a wide angle lens that straightens everything out a little bit, gets rid of some of the distortion. The distortion isn't that bad on these Canon RF lenses, but it still helped a little, and as you can tell, gives it just a little bit of a warmer feel, just corrects what's going on with the lens. And let's move on down to our effects. Again, I don't use too many effects ever. I do always put on a little bit of a vignette. I don't go too heavy on it because it can get a little too crazy, and that's not the look I'm going for. I'm trying to frame her out just enough so everything gets pulled into her. Anybody that looks at this image is immediately going to center in on our subject, which is nice and bright, and I'm going to add a little bit of grain. I'm going to go up to 10 on our grain, and we have our picture here. And I'm going to go back here, see what's going on. Looks like there's something that I'm missing. Looks like my temperature needs to go up a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and pump this up to 6,454. That's close enough, and this needs to go to +21. And let's see where we're at. It's 21, it's close enough. I'm missing something. I'm missing something from my original edit, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. Let's start with our crop before I dive into why it looks different than my original here. And I cropped it out to a square because these are going to go to Instagram. If I start out with a larger image, that would be okay. But because these are going on Instagram and we are trying to match a certain style on our feed, on Lisa's feed, I'm just going to stick to square because it's just the look that we are going for. So let's go back. We've got this image and we've got this image. It looks like my highlights need to go up, so I'm going to go ahead and pump these up here. I think I need to put our midtones up a little bit. Oh yeah, that's helping out a ton. So let me go up on those. So it looks like I may have done something else different. Let me check my tone curves on my reds. And it looks like that's where my difference is. I don't remember that I didn't remember that I adjusted my tone curve, but it looks like I did. So let's go ahead and add our 3 points like we were going to do an S curve, like we would typically do. I'm going to bring this to be neutral, to be at the base spot. Same up here. Now let's see where we're at. It's still a lot brighter, and you know what it is? We're good here on our tone curve. You can see it does worlds of difference. I love using the tone curve tool, helps us out a ton. The only difference is our light, and what I did in this one that I haven't done on this one yet, and I haven't touched on in any of my tutorials yet, is the radial gradient tool, which I used on all these images. Now it's set to teeth whitening, so it looks a little bit weird, but we're just gonna adjust the exposure here. I turned my feather all the way up because I don't want too noticeable of an effect, and I'm just gonna crank my radial gradient up a bit to a point where I'm happy. I'm almost happy, and I am happy there. Let's see how close we got from our original photo. Looks like I went up a little bit more on the previous edit, so I'm going to go ahead and pump this up. I'm just going to go to 1, and that's impossible to get, so I'm going to keep it there just for the sake of time. And yeah, here we go. We've got the final image. As you can tell, they're very, very similar. It looks like I may have done a little bit of extra correcting with a brush in certain areas, but aside from that, that's all we do to go from. I'm sorry, that is all we need to go from our original image, which would look like this, to get to this. Now, what I usually do is I will have a few other images that I need the same look for, and what I do to get to those, I click on my main one, hit Command or Control on the Windows, click on those that I want to apply these same settings to, and I'm going to go ahead and sync. I'm going to sync everything except my radial filter, because the radial filter will be added in different areas of each picture. I'm just going to sync these, and I have a very good place to start when I edit the rest of my content. As you can see, it won't be the same on all of them. Like this one will need to be adjusted quite a bit. You can already tell a few things are going to need to be different to get it to look like this image. I'm not going to go into that, but yeah, that was my edit workflow to get to this photo. As you can tell, the final images all come together and make a nice little carousel of these final photos. A little extra tip, this is the original photo. It's a detail photo, but as you can tell, I wanted to match the entire look. So what I did is went to Photoshop and just painted her nails orange, and I used the eyedropper tool inside of the Chakra guideline book here, and I painted her toenails, and it just gives it an extra effect. It just looks a lot nicer than that random green that is there. And that is how I edited these photos for some yoga branding. Now, if you wanted to take these settings and add them onto your entire feed and use it as a nice starting point, you're going to want to create a preset out of this. To create a preset, just hit the plus sign here under presets, hit create preset, click on every single one of the adjustments that you would like to keep. I don't need the transform adjustment here, but I do want everything else. Another thing I may not keep is the exposure, just because I shoot to the proper exposure typically, and adding that would mean it's going to apply the same light value to every photo, which is going to differ to every single one. You're going to be adjusting that anyways. So just a tip for me, I usually click exposure off, name this Sacral Vibes, I'm going to add it to a group, POP Portraits, Pablo Ortega Photography Portraits, and I'm going to go ahead and create this preset. Now anytime, let's say I go to this, let's say I go to this image, and let's say I reset this, but I want to give that same exact look I just had before. I come down here to my presets, go to Pop Portraits, and I should find Sacral Vibes. Click that, and I have a great starting point that is going to match all of the rest of my images. You can clean that up however you want. That way you're able to stay under the same guidelines, and this creates boundaries. So if you're trying to create a feed somewhere that has the same look to it, has the same features, I highly suggest you create a few presets on your own, and or download somebody else's, or buy some if you really feel like you need to buy them. They're very easy to create, as you can see, and use them as a good starting point. That way everything looks the same, everything's kind of under the same boundaries. Like I said, it's going to make your life a lot easier, and it's going to make your feed look much better. So that is how we edit those photos, and I'm going to go ahead and add these settings here so you guys can check them out. That way, if you want to create a preset out of this, all you have to do is copy and paste all of these settings onto a Lightroom photo and go ahead and create the preset, kind of like I showed you before. This is exactly what I had on my Lightroom tables, so feel free to copy these. I'll leave this up for just a second longer. I've actually gone 20 minutes and 30 seconds now, which was not my intention. I'm trying to make these as short as possible, but I do want to make sure you get all the information as to why I'm doing certain things, and hopefully you're gaining something out of this. If you have any questions on how I did a certain something, or if I didn't explain something correctly, or if I'm wrong on something, be sure to comment and let me know so I can adjust that and so I can get better. Because the reason I'm doing this is just so I can improve, I can help others improve, and just kind of take us to the next level as photographers, editors. And I really hope you enjoyed all this. I am signing off.